Welcome to the ZimmCast, a program dedicated to bringing you what's new in agricultural marketing. The ZimmCast is the official podcast of AgWired and hosted by Chuck and Cindy Zimmerman.
Hello and welcome to the ZimmCast. I'm Chuck Zimmerman. In this episode, I'm going to share some interviews from the NAFB Trade Talk about reactions from the recent presidential election. I'm going to include Mary Kay Thatcher, Syngenta Senior Manager, Federal Government and Industry Relations, Brian Jennings, he's the ACE CEO, Geoff Cooper, RFA CEO, and Ethan Lane, NCBA Vice President of Government Affairs.
Mary Kay, I'd love to get your thoughts on, things about what could or could not happen with the Farm Bill at this point, and anything you might want to say in terms of the impact of this election and what that might mean even for those in agriculture.
Well, I wish I could be more optimistic and say I think we'll get a farm bill done in this lame duck session, but I really don't. I think that the first measure of business has to be passing the 12 appropriations bills that haven't been passed. We're to fund the government. We can't let it shut down. I think the second thing is, for 60-some years in a row, we've passed every year the National Defense Authorization Act, so that will have to happen. And then I think we got to pass some kind of weather disasters bill, not just for the hurricanes, but floods and fires and everything else. And then we've had some leadership elections. We're going to have more. Then you're going to get who's the chairman of this committee and that one and the ranking member and who wants to be. And I think by the time you get through that, the 18 more days that they're going to be in session are gone and Christmas is here and everybody wants to go home. I think something that pretty much everybody agrees on is that there's going to be a reconciliation bill. In fact, there could be two reconciliation bills next year where then we only have to have 50 Senate votes versus the typical 60. So, the Republicans in the House and the Senate and the Trump campaign people have been talking for months about if we had a Republican trifecta, what would we shove in that reconciliation bill? How would it move forward? How can we be ready to go on day one? And so I think for sure that the extension of the tax cuts will be in there, and it'll be like, does everything get extended that was there before? Do you follow through with, Trump's thoughts about not taxing Social Security, et cetera, et cetera. So that's in there. There could be parts of the Farm Bill that get thrown in. You can't put everything in because there are rules about what gets thrown into reconciliation. But certainly I think that you will get a push there. Now, that's not to say just because it's a Republican trifecta, it's easy. Because, if we end up with, say, 220 Republicans in the House and 215 Democrats, well, that leaves poor Mike Johnson with only two defectors or two people who happen to have the flu and can't come to work that day before he's got to have some Democrats. So, we're going to have to continue to work at this bipartisanship. And again, once you get past reconciliation in the Senate, then you're going to have, even if you have all 53 Republicans, you got to have 7 Democrats join you. So I'm not professing that gridlock is over. I don't think it is.
I think it's going to be a busy time, as it always is. Anything else you might want to say we didn't touch on there?
Well, I think it is going to be a busy time. I mean, I think what we're seeing here just in the last few days, Chuck, is amazing to me how quickly Trump has named 10 or 11 people out of the top 25. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we're not having them all before Thanksgiving. And they're going to be ready to go. And, one difference we will see from 4 years ago is that it was a Democratic Senate. So I'm not saying they stalled things, but I don't think they had the incentive to move those confirmations along as quickly as possible as this Republican Senate's going to have. So I think we're going to see those confirmations go much quicker. As I said, I think we're going to see a reconciliation bill in the first 100 days with a lot of important things to agriculture. Taxes maybe being at the top of the list, but you better hold on to your seats because we're going to move quickly in Washington.
Yes, with the tax changes we had in 2017, I think it was, there's some of us would like to see some changes in that. I'm sure we're not the only ones, but we'll see how that all goes. Well, thank you very much, Mary Kay, for talking with me here. First of all, Brian, tell us a little bit about what's happened here with the Trump administration, these appointments. What's the reaction like?
Well, we're looking forward to working with President Trump again in his second term. His first appointment that's really relevant to ethanol is, of course, former New York Congressman Lee Zeldin. to run the Environmental Protection Agency. Look, as a New York congressman, as a Long Islander, Mr. Zeldin was not a supporter of the Renewable Fuel Standard, or E15. It's probable that he was misinformed by interest groups at that time that the RFS was going to cause fuel prices to increase and E15 would cause damage to vehicles. We know these things not to be true, and so I think what we can and should expect in the confirmation process is that senators, particularly Republican senators, since they are in control, will ask him the tough questions that need to be asked. Mr. Zeldin, if he were to be confirmed, won't represent Long Island. He will represent the United States of America. And when you look at the electoral map and you look at how rural America absolutely helped deliver the victory for the president, it will be incumbent upon Lee Zeldin to appreciate that fact and the fact that the RFS is extraordinarily good for rural America. And E15 reduces fuel prices and doesn't damage engines. And so I think there are opportunities here, absolutely, Chuck, to work with Republican senators to ask the questions of Mr. Zeldin in the one-on-one meetings they're going to get with him, in the confirmation hearing they're going to get with him, to make sure that we're going to be in a comfortable spot going forward.
How about when it comes to the 45Z and, the situation we're in with it right now?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's more questions than answers. So 45Z is known as the Clean Fuel Production Credit. It goes to any biofuel producer that can reduce their carbon intensity to 50 kilograms of CO2 or less. Once they reach that point or cleaner, they're, quote-unquote, in the money for the tax credit. We know that agriculture practices are supposed to play a really big part of this. Corn farming is about half of ethanol's carbon intensity, so if farmers are doing things on their operations to bring down greenhouse gas emissions, that means they're delivering lower carbon corn to ethanol producers, and ethanol producers should benefit from that in the tax credit. Unfortunately, we have zero guidance from the Biden Treasury on this. The tax credit's supposed to kick in 2025 on January 1st. And so it will likely be the Trump Treasury that decides the rules for this. Now, usually when a new president comes in, they put a sort of a freeze on any pending rulemaking. So there could be further delay in knowing what the rules are. But we also look forward to working with the Trump administration to make sure there's common sense and flexibility for agriculture practices to make sure that this tax credit works for everyone. The other thing we're going to want to try to do, Chuck, with 45Z in this new Congress is the Trump tax cuts of 2017 expire in 2025. The Republican Congress will work to renew or extend those. That's an opportunity for us to extend the life of 45Z beyond its current 2027 sunset period. And so we're going to be working with Republican champions in Congress to try and get 45Z extended so there's longer-term tax certainty for biofuel producers.
From an organizational standpoint, as we're in this lame duck session here, basically, what does that mean for the work you're doing in this period? How do you handle that?
Yeah, it remains to be seen whether the lame duck is figuratively and literally lame, or if there's some things that they actually try to get done. My bet is that there will be a very minute number of must-pass bills that get done. If I'm a Republican in Congress, it doesn't really, I have zero incentive to try and get a whole lot done right now when I'm going to have control of all branches of government next year. And so I'm predicting this to be a particularly lame Congress. Maybe, we've talked about making a run at E15 year-round legislation, but I don't know if that's gonna fly. We're gonna try, but looking forward to next year. Looking forward, frankly, to working with John Thune, a South Dakotan, as the majority leader in the United States Senate. Here is a guy who has been a long-standing champion for rural America, for farmers, and for ethanol. He's co-sponsored all of the pro-ethanol bills, and so for him to be able to help set the agenda in the Senate, Chuck, to decide what bills come to the floor, that's so important. We haven't had someone that's been a champion of biofuels in a position like that in a very long time, so we're looking forward to it.
Well, it's probably going to be an interesting job to have in 2025 to set up your annual fly-in.
We're really looking forward to our fly-in at the end of March. And, it's a great opportunity to meet so many new members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats alike, to meet with the new Trump team or the Trump 2.0 team at that time. And so for anyone listening that, is interested in public policy, is interested in advocating for the ethanol industry, the ACE fly-in presents a golden opportunity early in the Republican Congress, early in the Trump presidency, to help really push our priorities. And so we encourage people to go to our website and sign up.
Thank you very much, Brian. First of all, Geoff, we've had this election. It's I don't even know how to say it. It's something that's not happened in a long, long time. But what's the reaction in your industry for what we've seen so far?
Well, Chuck, I think we see some real opportunity with the incoming Trump administration and certainly a new Congress starting up next year. We're pretty excited about some of the potential to move some of our priorities and things that we've been working on for a long time. We see some openings to really advance the ball. And I think when you look at the priorities that Mr. Trump has talked about as he campaigned, he's talked about putting American energy first. He's talked about American energy dominance, getting a handle on energy inflation, right, helping lower energy costs for consumers. Those are all things that ethanol can do. Those are all boxes that we can check with ethanol. So we're excited about the opportunity to sit down with the new leadership in the incoming Trump administration to make our case and remind them of why ethanol should be part of their energy strategy and energy policy moving forward. Again, we look at on the congressional side, we think there's going to be a real opportunity to move that E15 legislation that we've been working on for so many years. Having Senator Thune named elected as the majority leader in the Senate is a huge deal for us. He's been a tremendous supporter over the last 20 years. He's kind of been at the forefront of every ethanol-related policy issue that's gone through the Senate. So that's good news. And then in the House, our friends and supporters in the House had a really good night on election night. Virtually all of our ethanol champions were reelected. Some of those races were very close, but we were pleased to see them emerge victorious, and we're excited about what that means for working with both the House and Senate next year.
Well, things are moving pretty fast with what Trump's doing to get people nominated and in different positions for different reasons. Yep. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I was going to mention, if you didn't, Senator Thune, but of course that was a good one.
Right. So, we've been paying close attention to the leadership elections in the House and Senate. And again, very excited about Senator Thune being elected as majority leader. But then in terms of cabinet appointments, we've been keeping a real close eye on those as well. It seems like every hour there's somebody new being announced. But for the agencies that we deal with the most, EPA, USDA, Department of Energy, we've only seen EPA so far. And Lee Zeldin, former congressman representing the 1st District of New York, served 8 years in Congress. Not a real deep track record on ethanol and renewable fuels issues. Where he does have a track record, it hasn't been great for us. I mean, he did sign his name onto some legislation that would have repealed the RFS, but that was a different time. The politics around the RFS have changed. The marketplace has changed. We don't have those same battles around the RFS that we did 6-7 years ago when he was in Congress. And so we're looking forward to sitting down with Mr. Zeldin and getting him up to speed on what's happening in the ethanol industry and really having a conversation about the importance of the renewable fuel standard to not just our industry but to agriculture as well.
You think it's, or I think it's kind of interesting, we haven't really seen anything news-wise about USDA for our secretary.
Yeah, that's the other very important cabinet position for our industry. Certainly, the current Secretary of Ag, Tom Vilsack, has been one of our best supporters within this administration, and so we know that USDA job can be very important. We've seen lots of speculation, lots of rumors, lots of names floated out there, but nothing official, and so we'll wait and see what Mr. Trump wants to do with USDA.
Anything else at this particular point as it relates to the election that you might want to say that we didn't touch on?
Well, we go through this every 2 years, and then every 4 years we have a general election. So we're just in the middle of that cycle. Our association will be very active in getting in early and getting in often to new members' offices, and especially meeting new cabinet members, new officials in the administration, to answer their questions about our industry and really promote and advocate for our policy priorities with those folks. So we got a lot of work ahead in the next 3 to 6 months.
Thank you very much, Geoff. Ethan, we're just coming through an election process, probably like we've never seen before. And tell us a little bit about what's happening here in relative to what we've seen when it comes to the cattle industry.
Well, this is obviously a pretty pivotal election for a variety of reasons. That popular vote total, first time in more than 2 decades that a Republican candidate won the popular vote, brings along with it, the defeat of ballot propositions that were really harmful all across the country. The CAFO ban in Sonoma County, the slaughterhouse ban in Denver, the mountain lion hunting ban in Colorado. There was some really wacky stuff out there, and across the board, whether it be representatives that are friendly to the cattle industry, whether it be a president that we've worked with before, whether it be the defeat of radical animal rights action around the country, a tremendous election cycle. And I think now eyes turn to what can be done with this in this new administration, what can they do and how quickly to dispose of 4 years of the Biden administration's weird obsession with blaming grocery store prices on cattle producers, having meeting after meeting after meeting at the White House, trying to find someone to point fingers at, on any of these issues. It's a reset and a great opportunity with both houses of Congress in the same spot to kind of right the ship and maybe spend less time talking about politics and gridlock, right? And just get a few things done, get a farm bill passed, and let's all focus on something else for a little while. I think that's what everybody's sort of hoping for.
Yeah, I think there were still people not too long ago still thinking we could somehow push through a farm bill. I'm like, really?
I mean, honestly, I'm there now in lame duck. I wasn't before the election, and I am now. And I think my counterparts with other trade associations, particularly in the barnyard, are all kind of looking at this the same way at this point. You have this moment in time now where you've got a bill that passed out of the House Ag Committee on a bipartisan basis. 4 Democrats voted for it. Everybody in agriculture, everyone in this building right now likes that bill. They got the things that they needed. There's no harmful poison pills. G.T. Thompson deserves an incredible amount of credit for the work that he did putting that package together. And the objections we heard from the Democratic side of the aisle maybe aren't nearly as bad looking at what they might be dealing with next Congress as they've been the last few months. So I think there are a lot of us that feel like maybe there's a moment in time here where they could put the pieces together and get this cleared off the decks before we go into the 119th Congress. And we would certainly advocate for that.
What else would be of interest in terms of what we've seen happen? Because it's going very fast to fill in some of these important positions. And
there's going to be a heavy focus on nominations and filling out the president's cabinet in the first 100 days. But, there's been discussion for months about how to tackle the tax package that's expiring. The best case scenario was exactly what we're looking at, which is Republican control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. Because remember, this is the Trump tax package from 2017. This is his product. So he, I think, is going to be very focused on getting that renewed, whether that's through the budget reconciliation process or elsewhere. I think that's going to be a priority right out of the gate. Certainly for agriculture, there's too much at risk here if we don't get those tax levels preserved by the end of this year. It's always, you hear people who are opposed to it calling it new tax cuts, and that's not a fair way to say it, because it's the rates that people are dealing with now. Right, it's preserving the current levels. So I think that's going to be a fairly dominant conversation, and particularly so if they're able to do something with the farm bill and get that off everybody's plates.
All right, before we close, anything else you want to touch on that we didn't?
I think this is going to be an interesting couple years, particularly since this coalition that elected the president has some newcomers that don't view agriculture the way a traditional Republican has viewed agriculture. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being in the mix adds a new wrinkle, and it's something that I think we're going to really need to take seriously in American agriculture. We have the science. We produce the safest, most abundant food supply in the known universe, and that is not an exaggeration. It's going to be really important for us to hammer that home, to educate those folks in the administration that don't understand that. We know that the president does. We know that he is a major champion of American agriculture, but we need to take that conversation seriously. We need to show up, and we need to make sure that we come with our facts and figures and our science to show what an incredible job the U.S. cattle industry does and U.S. agriculture does.
All right, well, thank you very much, Ethan.
Adding to these interviews, Cindy recently interviewed Kip Tom, Indiana farmer, and served as the ambassador to the United Nations agencies for food and agriculture during President Trump's previous term. You can find that interview. Just search for it on agnewswire.com. That's the ZimmCast for now. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the ZimmCast, the official podcast of AgWired. Check us out at www.agwired.com to find out what's new in agricultural marketing.